Willie says. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting on over 750 stations on Pacifica and NPR, and low-power FM and college and community stations, on public access TV and PBS TV stations in both TV satellite networks, Dish Network Channel 9415, Free Speech TV 9410, Link TV, and DirecTV Channel 375. And we're video and audio podcasting at democracynow.org. Our headlines also available in Spanish on our website, and they're available in audio form for any radio station to take as over 200 are. Well, Election Day is 2 weeks away. This year may see one of the highest voter turnouts in U.S. history, if not the highest. But filmmaker and author Eugene Jareki argues that while voting is essential, it's not enough. He writes, quote, "Unless we see our vote as part of a commitment to involve ourselves consistently and unrelentingly in the political process, our vote is wasted. This is because the forces that have led us to this economic, military, and political precipice exert such awesome power over the mechanics of Washington that no single candidate or group of legislators, whatever their intentions, can possibly go up against them unless armed with an irrepressible public mandate." Eugene Jareki argues American democracy has been undermined by the military-industrial complex. President Eisenhower warned about this in his farewell address to the nation in 1961.
My fellow Americans, this evening I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
President Dwight Eisenhower delivering his final address as President of the United States in 1961. He is featured in Eugene Jareki's film, Why We Fight. He also did the film The Trials of Henry Kissinger. His new book, just published, is called The American Way of War: Guided Missiles, Misguided Men, and a Republic in Peril. He joins us in our Firehouse studio. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Thanks for having me.
The American Way of War, what is it?
Well, the American way of war is usually a term used to think about sort of what America brought to war making that other countries hadn't done before, typically sort of mass production of equipment and weapons and logistics. And I sort of saw something evolve over our history that I thought was better represented by that term, the American way of war, which is really how America lost her way through war making, what war has done, the best of wars, the worst of wars, wars that seemed, quote, necessary and wars that seemed frivolous or driven by sort of shadowy motives like the one we've just experienced. The wars of all kinds, they guide America away from her founding principles, from basic standard norms of decency and humanity. And I think the American way of war is a sort of is a very tragic way, in a sense, that needs now to be fixed, needs to be rescued. And that's where I think the public comes in so necessarily.
Talk about President Eisenhower's last address.
Well, it's an incredible moment. Here you have a general turned president, the hero of World War II, becomes a two-term Republican president, and he takes his last few moments in office to warn his fellow Americans about this extraordinary threat to democracy, the military-industrial complex, a term he really coins that night, and leaves us with to now sit 40 years later and think, well, what exactly did he mean, and how do we apply it to today?
Republican president.
Republican two-term president. And really the hero of republicanism for the 20th century in so many ways.
In general.
In general. And a guy who knew very, very well from the absolute front lines of battle, and then from the front lines of the battles of Washington. He was once overheard in the Oval Office. He got so exasperated with the way in which the defense sector was manipulating public policy and really, as he said, holding his public policy captive, that he said out loud in exasperation in the Oval Office, "God help this country when somebody sits at this desk who doesn't know as much about the military as I do."
Barack Obama, who is now ahead in the polls 2 weeks ahead of the election, early voting has begun in scores of states right now, so people have already cast their votes, has pledged to increase military spending and has called for a surge in Afghanistan.
Yes. Well, this is business as usual in Washington. And I think, somebody like Barack Obama, you see somebody with what you would feel are probably very good intentions, and you get the sense that around the Obama kitchen table, there's a lot of heartfelt, well-meaning thought going on. And yet the machine does not care how well-meaning Barack Obama is. Doesn't care how well-meaning the voters are who hope that Barack Obama can make change. The machine is a cutthroat instrument of power. And all the rest of us are kind of cannon fodder in it. And it's not because it's, run by evil men like Dick Cheney. That's kind of incidental. What really is happening is that you have a machine out there that has a vested interest that simply pulses forward. And the only thing that can slow it is what Eisenhower called an alert and knowledgeable citizenry, basically all of us being deeply engaged. And we are not, for several reasons that have to do with how our society evolved and how the American way of war took over the American way.
This call you're making at the Huffington Post, saying voting is, essential, but not enough. Talk more about the activism that you're calling for.
Well, it's an amazing thing. The one elephant in the room that's always there that we all never talk about is just what we can do. And I get asked this question everywhere I talk to audiences. People really are scratching their heads about, well, what can I do? I'm just an everyday person. I'm overworked. I'm torn between paying bills and trying to put my kids through school. And I've got the cell phone and the computer and mortgage and everything. And it's very hard, to then say to somebody, well, your society is in peril. You need to be a Jefferson, you need to be a Madison, you need to think about this society. But I dare say, no matter how busy people are, we all have two things that we can do that are very crucial. One is to figure out, honestly, candidly, that we all have a bunch of time we waste in life, watching American Idol, surfing the internet, whatever we do that's our version of wasting time, and we all have something, no matter how busy we are. It's sort of human nature. You got to take some of that time and figure out how to direct it toward social change. Because if all you do is vote at election time and sort of wake up and go, oh my God, something's happening, I'll throw my vote in, it services your conscience, it services your desire to feel like you're doing something. But the actual practical implications of that are that a single candidate up against the incredibly tangled corruption of this system is hopeless. And they're made more hopeless by the fact that we are disengaged. Because without a public mandate, somebody like Barack Obama will enter the White House, and as you see, it's already happened in the evolution of his policy paradigms. He'll enter the White House without a mandate. And if he doesn't have a mandate, those enormous forces of power will give him a mandate. They'll give him a very clear mandate.
Explain your example of the B1 bomber.
Perfect example. The B1 bomber has a piece of the plane made in every